The Morning Sports Desk, available on demand on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and WadenaRadio.com.
It is the Morning Sports Desk on a Tuesday. I'm CJ Baumgartner. There's Corey Tackman. It's the 8th of October, and we got some high school volleyball on the broadcast schedule tonight, Corey, on 105.9 FM, the Superstation K106. Also streaming online at WadenaRadio.com and the Superstation K106 mobile app. A Highway 210 rivalry. The Battle Lake Battlers are hosting the Henning Hornets tonight. 7 o'clock pregame, 7:15 first serve. Corey, I've already started to do a little bit of the initial digging on the game prep for Battle Lake on the season. They are 5-14. Overall, Henning is 8-17. Two teams that are, just taking a bit steps back from where they normally have been, especially if you look at where the Henning Hornets program is. And I've done some initial digging, and I'll pull this sheet up behind me because I started to write already in my stat sheet for tonight the names. Not a lot of seniors on either team. I believe there is just one senior on the Battle Lake team and no seniors at all on the Henning Hornets team. So two teams that are young, two teams that are looking to try and build for the future. It'll be interesting to talk with both head coaches pregame, and Jennifer Roysum and Christy Fink. I think we all know Christy will tell us kind of what she thinks of the team and where they're at and kind of the trajectory. And it'll be interesting to have that conversation just to get to see what's going on with those programs and kind of what they're doing to kind of set up for that future success. If you look, the game will be in Battle Lake tonight. Both teams in the Section 6A standings are pretty close to each other. In the 6A North, where both of these teams preside, Henning is the 7 seed. Battle Lake is the 8 seed. The QRF between these two teams is about 13 points. Henning, has a 46 QRF value, while Battle Lake has a 33.6. And the team above Henning in the standings is Lake Park Audubon. They have 62.2. So Henning is probably pretty set where they're at, with only just a few games left until playoffs are officially seeded. Norman County East Ulen Hitterdal is right underneath Battle Lake with a 30.4 QRF. So if you're Battle Lake, you're trying to maybe cling to that 8 seed, try not to get jumped by them. Rothsay is a little bit behind, although I think they're pretty much it'll be either that spot for Battle Lake come playoff time. But I've always wanted to ask coaches, or I've kind of tried to poke around, just kind of, if you already are locked into your QRF seeding, like how does that change? Because now it's not like, hey, we need to win so we can get that extra home playoff game, or we need to win so we can get this seed. It's like, we're pretty locked in. Do you start to tighten things up already? Like, okay, now here's what we're going to look like because we already know. Or is it like, hey, now's the time to maybe try one last wrinkle? I don't know, Corey. What do you think?
I think it depends on who you are as a team. I think it depends on if you're really good or really bad, or being somewhere in the middle could change. Like if you're the 1 seed in Section 6A, you've been there a while, and you're not gonna, who you are. Maybe there's a fine-tuned piece here or there, but we're over a week now into October. Like there's not a lot of messing around anymore, and I don't think there's the chess pieces get moved early. That's what the first 2 weeks of practices are for. That's what the month of September is for. This is we got to find it now, or if we haven't found it, we're probably in trouble. Right. With the occasion of we're going to go with a hot hand here. We've had, like this player in the back row, this defensive specialist has got a hot hand right now, and I really trust their passing. So there may be that girl's going to get the edge over someone, but I think it depends on who you are and where you're at in the standings, in the rankings, in the those middling teams are probably the ones who move around the most. If you are really struggling this year, you kind of just, as Denny Green would say, they are who we thought they were, right? Like,
it's the Bill Parcells quote. You are what your record says you are. You're all that kind of
fixing it. There's not really any fixing it. There's just preparation and trying to get better for the next year and trying to grow and trying to improve. And that is as big a part of high school sports as going out and trying to win a section championship or a conference championship. Some of this is the life lesson stuff. This is the let's show me the kind of player and kind of person you are with your work ethic and perseverance, and that sort of stuff exists. And I'm not saying that about this particular match. I'm just, to answer your question, it just totally depends on who you are and where you are in the standings at this point of the year and your approach, I would imagine, to that sort of philosophy. But I don't think, CJ, there's a lot of I think most coaches, when I talk to them, and I'm sure this is the same thing that you'll find, and you have your answer to this is similar, but like, I think coaches just want to execute what they need to execute. Like there's scouting reports that happen, of course, and you need to know where your block needs to be, and you have to try to set that stuff up. But generally speaking, across all high school sports, do the fundamentals right, and things will take care of themselves.
Right.
Whether you're excellent or not excellent, if we just do the small little things that we're supposed to do to execute the sport, then I'm going to be happy with that,
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. No, I think you said it perfectly. I was going to try and pull up something for the schedule here for both teams, but the Minnesota Scores website apparently has autoplay videos that
No, that's good. That the website's completely difficult to deal with and is a complete bear at all times. Is that what you're telling me?
I'm more just giving the implication.
It's unnecessarily cumbersome for no reason at all. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Sure. Yeah. No, maybe not say, but maybe heavily imply. Yeah.
Here's the thing I'm excited for you about is these two teams are struggling this year, but this is also a fan base who was just at practice with each other mere hours earlier and is going to strap on football jerseys and helmets and play a football game with each other at the end of the week.
Mm-hmm.
This is, bar none, one of the most rowdy and ridiculous student sections you will find in the state all year long. The Henning Battle Lake volleyball matchup brings out the football players from Henning and Battle Lake, and they sit right next to each other, and they give each other so much grief the entire time. It's the best.
Right. And you see with other teams, right, when they play each other and one side will go, hey, let's play football. And then if they do that, they're like, oh, yeah, we're going to do that on Friday with each other.
Remember, we were just at practice together. You remember that?
Yeah. We're all a team. We're trying to win. We want to do all these things. And then, by the way, once we get done and we shower up and I put on that Battle Lake shirt, you suck.
I love it. I love the idea that everybody in that gym is going to sit on the same side of the stadium at football on Friday. But today it's Battle Lake Blue versus Henning Orange.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, it's a fun gym in Battle Lake, one of the most unique gyms around in the area.
Yeah,
it's small. It doesn't take much for it to get loud and rowdy and fun. So it should be a fun game. I'm looking forward to calling that one tonight. It should be competitive with these two teams and get to kind of see two younger teams start to build the pieces of what they hope to be in the coming years. All right, Corey, just one quick thing I want to talk about a little bit. Let's go around. We mentioned last week how tough Section 6A is, and it's just brutal. If you're somebody like Parker's Prairie, you have a 15-8 season, you're 9-4 in your section, and you're the 3 seed because Belgrade, Brewton, El Rosa, and West Central area are just absolute monsters right now. In your subsection. In Section 6A North, it's pretty much the same thing. Breckenridge is number 1, Hillcrest Lutheran Academy behind them. The New York Mills, who again, 16-7, a very nice season for the Eagles, 8-3 in the section, 3 seed. And then, of course, Henning and Battle Lake are there. If we look at 5A West, In the subsection, Sabika has gotten the top spot in the section with an 86.4 QRF. Browerville Eagle Valley, 74.1 behind them. Nevis at 61.6. Bertha Hewitt, 59.2. Walker Hackensack Akeley at 52.4. Ferndale at 35.3. They're just behind LaPorte. And Long Prairie Great Eagle is behind Ferndale with a 30.9 QRF as well on the season. So looking at that subsection, and 5A East, has Swanville at the top spot. They're cruising along, another good season for the Bulldogs. They're 18-3 overall, 12-0 in Section 5A for a 101.6 QRF. Although Mille Lacs is a nice team, they're right behind them, 88.5 QRF, and Pine River Bacchus at 78.5. Always a good program. The defending section champions there as well. So that's your peak into Class A. If you want to go into Class 2A, just to take a peek at the sections, because as we've mentioned, Corey, playoffs are not next week, but they're seeded a little over in like 10 days. All these final tournaments that teams go to over MEA does not matter because they're already seeded. It's more tune-ups and just kind of last-minute stuff getting together.
There's
if you look at
volleyball, CJ, 2 weeks from today.
Right.
Like, there'll be pigtail games on the 21st, 2 Mondays from now. But on the 22nd, there will be other sections will start their section volleyball runs.
Exactly. If you look in
tennis, by the way, this week.
Yeah, it's here. Playoffs are here. Fall sports is already starting to wrap up. It's crazy. If you look in Section 6 AA, Albany is the top seed there with a 145.9 QRF, Corey. They're 23-2, 12-0 in the section.
Decent.
By the way, how does it feel to be Sauk Center? You're 16-3, 6-2 in the section, a 121 QRF second. Nobody
feels terrible for Sauk Center around here.
Royalton has a QRF of 112.6, 17-5, 7-2 in the section, third. Pequot Lakes, the defending state champions in 2A, a 101.6 QRF, 13-7 overall, 7-2 in the section, fourth. Staples Miley's put together a very nice season. They've had some injuries. They've had some good wins. They right now are 7th in Section 6AA with a 15-8 overall record, 5-1 in the section, 91.1 QRF. Osakis and Pillager down towards the bottom of the section in second and third to the bottom, respectively, is where they're at in those sections. Looking in Section 8AA, you have Monaga, the second to last team there, right above Crookston in the section standings. Pelican Rapids in kind of the middle of the fray. Park Rapids area is entrenched in the middle of Section 8AA right now. They are the 8th seed. The 7th seed is Perham. Park Rapids area, by the way, 67.8 QRF. Park Rapids area, 70.4. And then you go up a little bit, and then the top of the section, Corey, is where things get tough. Holly is the best team in Section 8AA with a 10-1 section record, 17-5 overall, 125.5 QRF. Dilworth Glendon Felton, 17-5, 9-1 in the section, 123.3 QRF. Wadena Deer Creek has bumped up to third in the section, or has kind of stayed in that third in the section, I should say. And they have themselves pretty much carved out that spot with a 113.7 QRF, 14-7 overall, 7-1 in Section 8AA. So, that section remains to be pretty good. A lot of good volleyball, a lot of good playoff volleyball is going to happen in the next couple weeks. Aren't you excited, Corey?
Nope. Yeah, of course. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait. I love volleyball.
It's going to be really fun. There's going to be a lot of good stuff to talk about. So there's your little volleyball update there. Let's move into our state sports, Corey, and we talk about the Minnesota Vikings, who are 5-0, just like we all predicted. I got my little season prediction standings right here. I have 5-0. I predicted them to be heading into that bye week, and no, of course, I had them going like 2-3. I did have them beating the Jets, but I had them going 2-3 into the bye week, and you're like, well, not ideal, but you're not necessarily buried in the season yet. And I guess we'll get to the micro view in a second, but just macro for this team to be 5-0 going into the bye week. How do you feel as a Vikings fan, Corey?
I think we've had this conversation many times. I've had this conversation with other people. there's a funny stuff going around on social media right now. I think there are 6 teams in history that have started the season 5-0 and not made the playoffs, and 2 of them were the Vikings, which is pretty funny. I think 2016 was maybe the last time it happened. They started 5-0.
The other time was the Nate Poole game.
Right. They start in 2016. The season was built the same. They started 5-0. They had a bye week and then lost.
Starting quarterback got hurt in training camp.
But when you go back even a couple of years ago to that very fun Vikings season, right, where everything, like the biggest comeback in NFL history, and
everything was coming up Millhouse in that game.
The game against Buffalo, that unbelievable matchup, like all of the things that could have worked out for the Vikings that year, a pretty bad defense that they were just somehow able to overcome.
Turnovers every single time.
Right. That felt in the time very fun and very, I can't believe this is happening because this shouldn't be happening. Right. There was the realism on that season a couple years ago was an overarching like theme to how fun the season was. They just keep winning. This is so fun. How are they winning these games? Because they shouldn't be. This season does not feel like that. The 5-0 is a totally legit 5-0. Now, I don't know how great this Vikings team is, and I don't mean to like throw water on the fire that is this Vikings season. That's not what I mean by that. I just mean realistic. I don't know how good they are, but what I do know is every win has been a complete and utter win, with the exception of when we get to the micro stuff. I got some issues with the punt return team and the punt team, but we can talk about that in a second. They're dominating. The offense is doing everything it is required to do, and then some. The defense is shout out you and Zeke. You guys were all over how good this defense was going to be in the preseason. They're crushing people and embarrassing quarterbacks right now. And the kicker's a kicker. Like there's a real
thrill, man.
And everything about this 5-0 start is completely and utterly and totally legit.
Right. Even the 2016 Vikings, they started out 5-0, but like you knew their offensive line was beat up. You knew that like there were some issues that came up. You had a head coach who was a head case and who also lost an eye that season. There was a lot that, Adrian Peterson was hurt. Like there was a lot of things on that team where, we didn't think of it in the moment, but looking back on it, we're like, okay, yeah, the offensive line fell apart. And that's really what kind of was the end. You had an offensive coordinator get fired mid-season or leave or whatever. It was a lot of stuff that happened. And it's not to say that a collapse can't happen, but it's to say that I think this team is more sustained to win. There's a stat, Corey, that I think is just amazing. And I want to bring this stat up here. This is according to ESPN. Since the 1970 merger, here's the amount of times the Vikings have trailed in a football game in 2024. 3 minutes and 26 seconds. Through 5 games, they've only trailed for 3 minutes and 26 seconds of game time, and that was against the New York Giants of all teams. When CJ Ham fumbled the ball and then they kicked the field goal. Only 5 other teams in NFL history through the first 5 games since 1970 have done that. All of those teams, by the way, have gone to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's crazy.
The 09 Saints, through their first 5 games, never trailed. Never trailed.
Amazing.
The 84 Dolphins, who lost the Super Bowl that year, 1:07. The 2023 49ers, who lost the Super Bowl, 1:45. The 99 Greatest Show on Turf Rams, 2:30, won the Super Bowl. The only team to have less time trailing than the Vikings on this list was the 98 Broncos, who won the Super Bowl and only trailed in the first 5 games for a total of 4 minutes and 23 seconds. And that part, I don't know if that exact number is always sustainable, but I think it's the fact of, like we talk about, they're crushing teams. Like there is nothing that says, oh, you snuck out a win here and this and that and whatever. There is just this is a legit 5-0 team. Now, do I think they're going to make the Super Bowl? I'm not ready to stake my claim on that yet. But this team, even if they go 500 the rest of the way, is still winning double-digit games and has a chance to win the division.
Yeah, and I don't think, and I'll cover for you a little bit because I did the same thing. I don't think we're saying that they're not going to make the Super Bowl as like a pessimistic, oh, we're the Vikings, Minnesota sports fans. I think it's more of just like a realistic. It's really hard to make the Super Bowl,
right.
and there's no. I'm trying my hardest, and I think I've been consistent with this in our conversations over the last however many years. Like, I'm trying not to jump ahead. Like, the moment right now is the moment, and they're 5 weeks in, they're over a month into this season, and this team is really good right now. It guarantees nothing because, like in 2016, injuries happen, weird things happen, somebody dies, a family member. You know what I'm like? There's all of these different things that can galvanize you or make it start to wilt a little bit, and the Vikings have had some galvanizing things before the season even started, which I think is probably the place where it needs to happen, because once it happens in season, it becomes distracting. And I don't mean Cam Newton distraction. I mean, it's distracting. It pulls your focus away. But for the Vikings, what I was worried about is all of these things happening before the season would spiral, and how do you recover? It's turning out anyway to seem like these have been galvanizing things for that team.
Right. Okay, there's two more things I want to talk about Vikings related on the sports desk, and we'll call it an episode. One will be Harrison Smith. I want to get to that at the end of the show. Let's just go into the micro level here and talk about this game, because the Vikings beat Aaron Rodgers for what likely will be the final time in Rodgers' career. The Jets just fired their head coach yesterday. They're a mess of a team, or this morning.
Are you predicting a retirement from Aaron Rodgers?
I'm saying that there's unlikely, since the Jets are in the AFC, the Vikings are going. Unless, of course, the Jets make the Super Bowl, which is.
I thought you were making a very bold prediction that Aaron Rodgers would be dying this week.
Did you see that video of him like crawling on the field?
Yeah.
And it's very funny. It's very funny. It looks like you probably won't get this reference, Corey, but it looks like when your character dies in Fortnite and they get knocked, is what's called. You're not dead yet, but you have no health. You can't attack anybody. You're just like crawling very slowly, and you can still heal yourself, but you're basically just a sitting duck. Somebody's going to nail you. And it's just when you've been knocked in Fortnite, he's just slowly crawling. Anyway, it was, I laughed at that one a lot. All right. But the Vikings beat Aaron Rodgers. Well, likely is the final time in Aaron Rodgers' career that he will play the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings come out, they start strong like they always do. They got a punt right away. They kicked a field goal. And then the big play was the Andrew Van Ginkel pick six. Again, Van Ginkel looked like he was going to blitz. Rodgers knew he had to do the hot check, so it was just one throw. Van Ginkel immediately goes back, catches it, and Rodgers got ginkled. He got ginked. He got whatever word you want to use that sounds kind of close to a slur but isn't. Andrew Van Ginkel able to get into the end zone there. I think the defense is the story of the game. I know they gave up some stuff late, but the offense, I think really the story of the game is the offense didn't quite click. Aaron Jones left with an injury. Ty Chandler did not have a great game at all, where they trusted C.J. Ham getting runs more than they trusted Ty Chandler. I just think overall it was not a good day for the offense. It didn't matter. Team won the game. Not apologizing for that. But I think if that's just an area where Darnold had maybe his first game where you're like, oh, yeah, that's right. This is a guy who's on his third team in like 4 seasons.
This is at risk of sounding like I'm making excuses for Darnold. The dude came out of the ball game because he got hit so hard, and everybody
take a shot to the ribs.
He had a broken rib, and then was not the same from that point forward.
By the way, as an aside, KOC Nick Mullins in the game immediately a wheel route to Aaron Jones.
Yeah,
that guy's gonna dial up passes for anybody.
Yeah, of course. That. It turns out you got to be able to throw the ball to win. But Darnold got schmucked, and nobody's talking about how he wasn't this. Everyone's talking about how Sam Darnold's going to Sam Darnold, and it wasn't good. And this is the first time we saw it. And again, I'm making excuses, but he got absolutely hammered and then wasn't the same from that point forward. Oftentimes those are related. Now, he might not be injured, but it might have hurt.
You're a little sore.
And it might just be that I don't typically like early bye weeks for my favorite team, but it might just be that an early bye week is exactly what this team needed to get healthy. And, you know, we've seen it. It's a rib injury for a quarterback. Kirk Cousins had one for the last 14 straight seasons, it feels like. You just got to stand in there and take hits sometimes when you're the quarterback, and you have to be able to execute when it does really hurt. And he wasn't perfect. He was borderline bad at times. You were right to say that this is a defensive win. Two really nice defenses in that game.
Yeah, the Jets defense, and that's the other thing too. That Jets defense is no joke, especially in their front. Their cornerback group, like 1 through 4, is very solid. You had some uncharacteristic drops from Justin Jefferson.
2 weeks in a row, by the way.
Right. What I would say with this too, and I'm not trying to make excuses for Darnold either, but I will give him this. I think as Kevin O'Connell has done him a lot of favors. He's been very good overall. This is a nitpick, and this is just more of a micro level critique and not a macro level critique. I don't think in that specific game, Kevin O'Connell did Darnold a ton of favors because, like you said, he's a guy that got hit in the ribs. He's a guy that's probably feeling it a little bit. Aaron Jones is out of the game, and they just kept it felt like running 4 verticals every single play. Like they were just throwing it deep every single time. And O'Connell said they were trying to take away the underneath stuff. Okay, I get it. You also have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, who are 2 great route runners. Like they can get themselves open in the short field anyway. But I think the biggest thing is O'Connell just had his hand on the pass button just a little bit too many times, and especially deep down the field. And you saw that they almost let the Jets back into the game when Darnold throwing deep downfield threw an interception. And it allowed, and I've seen some replays that say it was the right read. Darnold just didn't quite get there. It was just a step behind. It just didn't quite work. That's fine. I just think they threw it deep a little too many times. And I'm not saying they needed to run the ball because as we talk about, you don't want to run into the center 3 straight times. But I think there's 2 weeks in a row now where, again, like we talked about last week, how dare you? You don't know how to coach with a multi-score lead every single game. Like, the good teams are going to happen. It's the NFL. You can't bury teams like you can maybe in college. But the nitpick of that is I don't think Darnold got helped out by his play caller. I think they just got a little too aggressive. And look, Kevin O'Connell said he's not going to apologize for that. But I think that's just one where this is one the Vikings should have ran away with, and you allowed Aaron Rodgers to almost Aaron Rodgers the Vikings one last time.
You bring this up with Kevin O'Connell a lot, and you always I'll give you credit. You always disclaimer it and say I'm nitpicking, so I understand the level. I almost always disagree with you. I just don't think I don't think there's anything wrong with in a play when you look up and the receiver is wide open and the throw isn't there. There's nothing wrong with that play call. There's everything wrong with the execution. Now, not helping him out, not helping out a hurt quarterback. Sure, I do understand that, but the dude's out there. Like, what do you? I don't understand. Like, what else are you supposed to do but call the plays? The guys out there playing for you, and to just to supplement that point. It's not like the running back was executing to the level he needed to either.
That was a bad fumble by Ty Chandler.
Who are you going to trust in those spots? Are you going to trust the guy who's been quite trustworthy up to this point in the season, or a running back who up until this year, when required, you weren't handing him the ball?
Well, and I think too, like you talked about, it's maybe not even so much Darnold, but it's just get the ball to Justin Jefferson, throw it in his direction. Like,
sure. But and again, I'm like we talk about, other teams have agency.
Right.
So it's not like the Jets defense isn't out there guarding Justin Jefferson. It's not, the Randy ratio is ridiculous for the sole fact that the other team plays defense against Randy Moss and has to try to guard him. So the play is probably designed for Justin Jefferson a lot of times. And when you look up and get to the line of scrimmage and there's safety help over top, you're off. It's to someone else who's got to make a play, you know?
Right. So, yeah, it's nitpicks. It's little things. Look, they have multi-score leads. There's going to be a time where they're down. It'll be fascinating to see. So we'll kind of monitor that as things go on throughout the next coming.
I love this KOC thing. I have two people in my life who are just like who like to call KOC out. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it, but you are very vocal about it. And I have one other friend in my life who's like, this guy, he's got to figure it out.
By the way, I think KOC is a great coach. This is a nitpick.
So does he. I'm not saying you don't. I'm saying you're the only two people in my life who like you've called him out like 4 of the 5 games on stuff already this year. No one else is. You're the only. You and my buddy Nathan from college are the only two.
It was interesting. If you go back to that first drive where the Vikings did kick a field goal, they were at like the 30, 3rd and 1, and they call a hard play action, and Darnold maybe should have just tried to get the ball out, but he took the sack, whatever. Not going to critique him too much for that because we've seen him try to escape and throw a bad ball. But we've seen it repeatedly in the short yardage, and I don't blame Kevin O'Connell all the time, but it's because, look, their interior offensive line is to be desired, especially at guard, left guard, right guard, whatever Ed Ingram's spot is. But
it doesn't. Wherever Ed Ingram is, it's probably a weak spot.
He had a bad game, and man, he's lucky Dalton Reisner's on the short-term IR because the moment he gets off, he's probably getting benched.
Yeah,
he's coming to take his spot, and that's just been something. Now the Jets have Quinnen Williams, who's one of the best D tackles, like nose tackles in all of football. He's going to give you some problems, like we talked about Kenny Clark doing for the Packers against the Vikings, and I think they just can't trust. And that's where you saw it against Green Bay, where they had to do jet sweeps on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, because they can't quite trust their offensive line in short yardage situations to get that, especially when Aaron Jones isn't in the game, to get short yardage. And I'm not saying that that's like, this team is flawed, this team's going to stink, this whatever. I'm just saying if you're going to nitpick in ways where it's like, if you end up in that situation, you might be in trouble, which weirdly for some teams isn't. So it'll just be fascinating because you're going to play a team in a couple weeks in Detroit. You're probably not going to be ahead by 2 scores in the second quarter. Like, very unlikely.
Detroit would be good.
Yeah, that should be a fun game, though. That was a game I think nobody really thought much of, and you can tell because the Vikings had 2 primetime games if you count Thursday Night Football. They have Thursday night against the Rams in a couple weeks, and then they have a Monday Night Football game against Chicago, probably in Soldier Field, in the middle of the season, and that's it. And
Week 15 at home versus Chicago.
Okay, cool. They wanted Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. They requested the indoor stadium. I respect it. But that's the only primetime game. Now I think there's a lot of people that are looking at all those primetime games they gave to, like, I don't know, pick a random team like the Cardinals or something. They're like, that was a mistake. But
I will say this, from week 11 on, technically there is an asterisk on every game, because they can start flexing.
Get ready to learn Saturday afternoon game, buddy. That's what it's going to be. Okay, one last thing, and then we'll wrap up the show here. Harrison Smith, by the way, got to the 30-plus interception, 20-plus sack club as a defensive back on Sunday. And there's just a list that we've talked about this before off air, but just to bring this stat up one more time, 30-plus interceptions, 20-plus sacks in his career. After, by the way, Harrison Smith sacking Aaron Rodgers in the big 2024, which is, just makes me feel a little old.
Double checks him and it still works out. That has never worked in the history of Aaron Rodgers' career, where someone discount double checks him and then Rodgers doesn't immediately go on a rampage.
Right. It usually ends in Rodgers flicking a 50-yard bullet down the field to Jordy Nelson, and then he runs all along the Bears sideline. Yeah, usually it's not quite it works out, but Harrison Smith did it, and Harrison Smith joins a club with Rondé Barber, Leroy Butler, Brian Dawkins, Rodney Harrison, Larry Wilson, and Charles Woodson. Out of all the players on that list, Rodney Harrison is the only one not to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Look, Harrison Smith's a quiet guy. There's a little bit of politicking that goes into getting into the Hall of Fame. We see it's why Jared Allen's not in the Hall of Fame right now. But come on, man. Harrison Smith has got to be a Hall of Famer, right? We know he is. But, I mean, I just have this weird feeling that it's going to take him longer than it should.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like unless you are a quarterback, there you kind of are an unknown just to fans in general, right? Everybody's team knows who's really important and has been a stalwart for that organization for a long time. Vikings fans are completely and utterly aware of who Harrison Smith is and how good he is compared to what they think but like who's the safety for the Lions? Who's the safety for the Cardinals? Who's this? You know what I mean? Like, so I do get that. Now there's one safety who is kind of a face of a franchise, and that's Troy Polamalu. And this was coming out after Harrison joined that 30-20 club that you were talking about. And it's just a heads up side-by-side comparison on some key stats between Polamalu and Harrison Smith, okay? First of all, in total games, when this season is over, Harrison Smith is going to have played 2 full seasons more than Troy Polamalu, right? We're talking 181 games to 158. So that's important to put the rest of these into perspective. But Harrison Smith, 35 interceptions to Polamalu's 32. Okay. 20 and a half sacks compared to Polamalu's 12. And I don't know about you, but when I think about Troy Polamalu, I think about him leaping over the line of scrimmage to block kicks, to blow up kickers, to blow up quarterbacks, to blow up running backs in the backfield. That is when I think of Troy Polamalu, that's what I think of. And Harrison Smith has him by 8.5 sacks, which is a stunning number. And maybe even more surprising, CJ, 785 tackles compared to 583. He has over 200 more tackles, does Harrison Smith, than Troy Polamalu. The only category really where he leads, at least as far as like basic stats go, is forced fumbles. Polamalu had 14 forced fumbles. Harrison Smith has 12. But Harrison Smith has 8 fumble recoveries compared to 7 for Polamalu. I understand that's just, that's
a little more fluky. Yeah,
that's right place, right time. I get that. But we're talking about Hall of Fame for Polamalu, 2 championships, 8 Pro Bowls, 6 All-Pros, 1 Defensive Player of the Year. For Harrison, 6 Pro Bowls, 2 All-Pros. That's it. I would say that he is an unheralded star of the NFL, and he is a bona fide Hall of Famer.
He should be. And the thing is they're going to remember eras. And Harrison Smith came in at the end of the Polamalu era. And while Harrison Smith was a good safety, and he eventually got on some good defenses, the first few years of his career, it was the Seattle Seahawks. There was Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas and the Legion of Boom, and those guys. A great nickname for a defense, by the way.
Awesome.
Like it was great. And I think he just got overshadowed because, as we know, the Seahawks defenses were good. They also were loud, and I mean that in an endearing way. Like they were making headlines. They were talking. They were backing their stuff up. They were like, and I think where Harrison Smith is a quiet killer in a way. Like he's just not a guy that will get that recognition.
And also the Hitman for a reason. That's why it's a great nickname for him. First, alliteration is fun, but also he's just like a silent assassin. Did you see him and Harrison Phillips, by the way, the 2 Harrisons and their Peaky Blinders before the game?
Yeah. Somebody said Vikings by 1,000,000, and well, they did win.
Was that the coolest thing of all time? Holy
super cool looking. Super cool looking. And
no,
I think
Harrison Smith has been not just good for his entire career. He's been great.
And yeah, he may not be the player he was 10 years ago.
Definitely not.
But it's funny in the off season, they go, oh yeah. And in the early training camp, Flores and O'Connell will go, yeah. We know we have to limit Harrison Smith a little bit. Look at his snaps. He's playing like every down.
Well,
he's not on the field all the time because one, it's, we don't trust the guys behind him maybe a little bit, but it's also look, man, Harrison Smith is he's a good player, and we're going to put him out on the field.
Well, they're using him appropriately, right? The Ed Donatel free safety and play center field is not who that guy is probably ever, but certainly not anymore. But do you know who he is? He is I'm going to blow you up at the point of attack right now. And whatever he's lost on his, if he's a step slower than he was a decade ago, even a step and a half, he makes up for in being very smart and understanding and interpreting what's happening on the field and getting to the right spot. He's awesome.
It was the biggest critique of Donatel, not just the fact that they told him to stand in the parking lot, but the fact that he couldn't even get to the line of scrimmage. That Donatel defense was you break the huddle, you go where you need to go, and you just stand there. There's no
Hunter in coverage and Harrison Smith playing deep halves.
Right. And the thing
about
the Harrison Smith that makes him so special is the fact that even if he doesn't blitz, he's going to creep up to the line and he's going to look at you like, I'm going to murder you. And then as a quarterback, you see that and you go, hey, change coverage. And then he goes back and then, change the blocking. And then he goes back into coverage. He blitzes. Like, he's deceptive.
In the NFL, they talk about it all the time in quarterback coach pairings, right? You hear like Drew Brees and Sean Payton was just a perfect NFL marriage. Like Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, but even before that, like Alex Smith and Andy Reid, like you needed that. Turns out Mike Zimmer and Harrison Smith, and now Brian Flores and Harrison Smith is just a really good NFL marriage. He is playing in a system suited for him. And by the way, that's good coaching.
Right.
That's what good coaching is.
Exactly. Harrison Smith could have been cut. The Vikings could have cut bait and said, we're done. Harrison Smith could have asked to be released, or he just could have retired. But he comes back because there's a fit here. And the moment they hired Brian Flores, I knew they were keeping Harrison Smith because he's not the same defensive coach as Mike Zimmer. They're a little different in their scheming. But the gist is they like to be on the attack as a defense, whereas the Vic Fangio style is sit back and set your opponent up to make a mistake. Whereas this style of defense is we're going to punch you in the mouth and we're going to see how you respond, and we'll leave ourselves open for big plays, but we think that we'll be able to execute enough to cover that up. Anyway, all this is to say Harrison Smith is a Hall of Famer, and he does hit that milestone. He does get some recognition. It's good to see Aaron Rodgers lose, America wins, all that good stuff. This has been the Morning Sports Desk for a Tuesday, the 8th of September.
The Morning Sports Desk, available on demand on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and WadenaRadio.com.